بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. عن المصنف رحمه الله عن عائشة رضي الله عنها أن الحارث بن هشام رضي الله عنه سأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: يا رسول الله، كيف يأتيك الوحي؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: أحيانا يأتيني مثل صلصلة الجرس وهو أشده علي فيفصم عني وقد وعيت عنه ما قال. وأحيانا يتمثل لي الملك رجل فيكلمني فأعي ما يقول. فقالت عائشة رضي الله عنها: ولقد رأيته ينزل عليه الوحي في اليوم الشديد البرد فيفصم عنه وإن جبينه ليتفصل عرقا. Narrated Aisha radiallahu anha, the mother of the faithful believers. Al-Harith bin Hisham radiallahu anhu asked Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, O Allah's Messenger, how is the divine inspiration revealed to you? Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam replied, sometimes it's revealed like the ringing of a bell. This form of inspiration is the hardest of all, and then this state passes off after I have grasped what is inspired. Sometimes the angel comes in the form of a man and he talks to me and I grasp whatever he says. Aisha radiallahu anha added, verily I saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam being inspired divinely and noticed the sweat dropping from his forehead on a very cold day as the inspiration was over.
This hadith, which is the second hadith in the book of Kitab al-Wahi, or how the inspiration began and was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This hadith is narrated, this Sahabi who narrates the hadith is who? Aisha. Who is Aisha? The wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the daughter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. There's a little story here that happened. She said the Prophet ﷺ was asked a question. He said that a man named Al-Harith ibn Hisham asked the Prophet ﷺ, how does the revelation come to you? And who is this man, Harith ibn Hisham? You look like there is some hope. Harith ibn Hisham ibn al-Mughira. Okay. His brother is named Amr ibn Hisham. His brother Amr ibn Hisham is very, very well known. But for that, no. Amr is very well. He's not known. He's known by his kunya, and he's known for very, very bad. Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl, his real name is Amr ibn Hisham ibn Mughira. And al-Mughira ibn Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Makhzum. They're from the tribe of Makhzum, and the tribe of Makhzum, or not the tribe, the clan of Makhzum, which is the clan within Quraysh. And Makhzum was along with Abd Manaf, they were the two most prestigious clans within Quraysh. And I mean, you see it from a lot of things, but for example, there's some narrations in the Sirah that someone asked Abu Jahl once, don't you recognize that the Prophet ﷺ is truthful? And he says, well, obviously, but we have been doing all that we have been doing all that we could to keep up with Abd Manaf. They do this, so we do this. Now they say they have a prophet from them. No, I can't let that happen. And the point is that Banu Makhzum, they were very influential, powerful, and prestigious before Islam and after Islam as well. Al-Harith ibn Hisham was the brother of Abu Jahl, and he was, again, a staunch enemy of Islam in the beginning. And he was, I think he was much younger than Abu Jahl. We read in the Sirah, I think he was one of the 3 people who came to visit Abu Talib when he was on his deathbed, and convinced him not to even say the words La ilaha illallah. In the Sirah, we read that he was in the Bay'at al-Aqaba, when the Ansar from Medina, they came to give the Bay'at to the Prophet ﷺ, and they gave it to him in secret. And not all of the leaders from the Al-Aws and Al-Khazraj, from the Ansar, from the people of Medina, not all of them knew that Bay'ah had been given to the Prophet ﷺ. So the next morning, when the rumors of that reached Mecca, they sent some of their leaders there to talk to the tribes from Medina to see if that's really true and to warn them not to do something like that. One of the people they sent was Al-Harith ibn Hisham. And there's a story in the Sirah that Ka'b ibn Malik was Ka'b ibn Malik. Yes?
The one who was left behind at the War of Tabuk.
Yes, one of the 3 people who were left behind in the Quran, the end of Surah Al-Tawbah. The Battle of Tabuk. He was, before Islam, he was a poet, and after Islam, he was a poet as well. He's one of the 3 most famous Muslim poets in Medina. And he was one of the ones to give bay'ah in that situation. And they said the next day when they came to talk to the chiefs from Medina, Ka'b ibn Malik, like Abdullah ibn Ubay, and the ones who didn't know, the ones who hadn't accepted Islam, they told, and they were truthful because they didn't know, what had happened. They told the leaders from Quraysh, we don't know what you're talking. We have no idea what you're talking about, and none of them would have done something like that without our permission. Ka'b ibn Malik, he said that I wanted to join in on the conversation, so I looked over to one of our chiefs. His name was Abdullah ibn Haram, the father of Jabir ibn Abdullah. And I said to him, he said that Harith ibn Hisham was wearing some very expensive, pretty shoes. So I said to Abdullah ibn Haram, look at the shoes this young man has. How you are our sheikh, our chief. Why don't you have shoes like he has? And Harith ibn Hisham, because he heard him compliment his shoes, he took them off and threw them over to Ka'b ibn Malik. And Abdullah ibn Haram said, you shouldn't have, you put him on the spot, you shouldn't have done it, you should give him back his shoes. Ka'b ibn Malik said, I'm not giving them back. And he said, لَإِنْ صَدَقَ الْفَأْلُ لَأَسْلُبَنَّ. He said, I'm going to take this as a good sign, an omen. Like he's giving me his shoes, I'm going to, can you translate that?
He was expecting something good coming after that, so he will not return it back, so we can accept it.
And it's like a sign that they would defeat them and take spoils from them.
No.
He said, I'm going to take this like a good omen. This is a sign that we're going to have the upper hand against them, and we're going to take spoils from them. And that did happen in the Battle of Badr. And Harith ibn Hisham was one of the ones who fought on the side of Quraysh in the Battle of Badr, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him, Allah spared him, and he ran away. And then there's some poetry by Hassan ibn Thabit and taunting him because he turned around and fled at the Battle of Badr. And Harith ibn Hisham, he accepted Islam. He was one of the Tulaqa, one of the people that the Prophet ﷺ forgave on the day of the conquest of Mecca. He accepted Islam during the conquest of Mecca, and later on, subhanAllah, and Allah spared him in the Battle of Badr. Later on, he died in the Sham, in Palestine, in Syria, and there was a big plague in the year 18 after the Hijrah, and he died in that plague, and that's shahada. So, and inshallah, he died as a shaheed. He had a son named Abdurrahman ibn al-Harith ibn Hisham. This son, again, was also very prestigious like his father. Oh, and I remember there's a line of poetry someone said about Harith ibn Hisham. You know, poets, they would insult each other, take turns trading insults. And someone said to someone else, كأن أباك حين تسبني في المجد كان الحارث بن هشام. He said, the person that was, they were trading insults with, he said, you're insulting me like your father is Al-Harith ibn Hisham. And I mean, that shows how prestigious Al-Harith ibn Hisham was. Like, if your father was Al-Harith ibn Hisham, then you would have the right to look down on people, but it's not the case. Oh, that's things that poets say are not, Now, his son Abdurrahman ibn Harith was one of the 4 people that were commissioned to write the Mus'haf by who? Not Abu Bakr. Uthman. Uthman commissioned 4 people to write one united Mus'haf. They were Abdurrahman ibn Harith, his son, and who else? Zayd ibn Thabit from the Ansar, Abdullah ibn Zubair, and Sa'id ibn al-As. 3 people from Quraysh and 1 from the Ansar. Al-Harith ibn Hisham, his grandson Abu Bakr ibn Abdurrahman ibn Harith ibn Hisham they were in that first century in Medina. There were 7 scholars in the generation after the Sahaba. They called them the Fuqaha al-Sab'a, the 7 Fuqaha. His grandson Abu Bakr was considered one of them, and they used to call Abu Bakr ibn Abdurrahman ibn Harith, used to call him Rahib Quraysh, and the monk of Quraysh, because he was known for his ibadah, as long as also for his knowledge. And his grandson here narrates a lot of hadith in Sahih Al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. And they say he was blind as well, but he was a very important scholar in his generation. Now, Al-Harith ibn Hisham asked this question of the Prophet ﷺ, and you assume that this question was probably asked, perhaps it was asked when he first accepted Islam, when the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca or shortly thereafter. Regardless, Harith ibn Hisham, he was a new Muslim, relatively new Muslim, and he was asking the question. And we kind of sense that from the nature of the question that he's asking. And another hadith in Sahih Muslim, Anas ibn Malik said that we had been forbidden in the Quran from asking the Prophet ﷺ anything. So the Sahaba wouldn't ask the Prophet ﷺ anything. And the Prophet ﷺ also taught us, the Prophet ﷺ said, Daruni ma taraktukum, which means basically, if I haven't told you about something, don't ask about it. And which is very important for us to understand, even though we can no longer ask the Prophet ﷺ, but something that the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, or the Prophet ﷺ in the Sunnah didn't specifically make an issue about, we don't need to raise it, exactly. We don't need to make an issue about it. But Anas, in that hadith, Anas said that we would be really happy if a Bedouin came, because the Bedouin didn't know this. The Bedouin would come and ask the Prophet ﷺ, especially, Anas said, like an intelligent Bedouin. And also the nature of the question, what Al-Harith ibn Hisham was asking, again, it's not something it's like you see it, the curiosity of a new Muslim. It's not something that you expect any one of the more knowledgeable Sahaba would have asked, because what he's asking is something that has no practical benefit to him, and it's not something that he can actually fully understand. Similar to what we were talking about a few days earlier in Tafsir about the Bedouin who came to the Prophet and asked him, Mata Sa'a, when is the hour, the time of the final hour going to be established? The Prophet so Al-Harith ibn Hisham asked this question, and the Prophet out of his good character, he answered the question. And the response of the Prophet would differ based on the person he was dealing with. And we see like this is a relatively new Muslim, the Prophet is going answering the question. We see also an Hakim ibn Hizam, who was another one of the new Muslims who accepted Islam on the day of Fath. He said in another hadith in Sahih Al-Bukhari that I asked the Prophet and he gave me. Because the Prophet after the battle, he had a lot of spoils and he distributed them very generously, especially to like the influential people, the powerful people in Quraysh. Hakim ibn Hizam, who was another influential man in Quraysh, he said, I asked the Prophet and he gave me. And I asked him and he gave me. And I asked him and he gave me. So it's good. The Prophet told us not to ask. But this is a man who's just accepted Islam, and the Prophet is being generous, and he's not saying anything. And then Hakim Hizam said, then I asked him, and he said, this wealth, whoever takes it when they're out of greed and they're eager to take it, they won't have any, they will be like a person who eats and never gets full. And someone who takes what comes to them without being greedy, they will have blessing in it. Hakim ibn Hizam, it's as if the Prophet understood that now he could understand this, and it was time to teach him. Hakim ibn Hizam, after that, he would refuse to take anything, even the stipend that he deserved when the Umar was Khalifa, and he had a particular stipend that he had earned. He would refuse to take it after he heard the Prophet tell him that. And Umar made a public speech and said, I want everybody to bear witness that I'm trying to give him his stipend and he's refusing to take it. But that shows that the Prophet waited till it was an appropriate time to teach him. And you see that from the effect it had on Hakim ibn Hizam. Now, Al-Harith ibn Hisham asked the Prophet this question, how does the divine inspiration happen? And the Prophet answered and gave him a simple answer. The Prophet said, basically, there are two ways in which the divine inspiration comes to me. The Prophet said, sometimes it's like the ringing of a bell. And this is the Prophet putting it in the words, the closest words as possible for us to understand. It's like the ringing of a bell. This is, as far as we know, this is the only way that the Prophet actually tried to describe it for us. What we know, for example, what Aisha mentioned at the end of the hadith, and from what a number of the other Sahaba narrated descriptions of what the Prophet looked like from the outside. The Prophet said, this way is the most difficult way. And I leave that state where it goes away. When it goes away, I have grasped what was said to me. And the second way, the Prophet said, sometimes I see the angel in the form of a man. And he talks to me, and I understand what he says. The second way, and we know there's a very famous hadith, example of that, the hadith of Jibril. And some scholars, apparently this second way, it's not difficult for the Prophet ﷺ. Understand that when we describe the first way as being the most difficult way for me to receive revelation. Some scholars, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, have commented on this, saying that the reason for the first way being difficult or being a hardship on the Prophet ﷺ, they say in order for two entities to communicate, they have to be on the same level or the same plane. Like if you want to talk to a very young child, you can't talk to them the way you talk to an adult, and you have to sort of, lower your level of speech. So either the angel can come down to the human level, or the human has to some way go up to the angel's level. If the angel comes down to the human level, obviously that's not going to be a difficulty for the human. But when the human has to go up to the angel's level, it's a burden because he's going up to a higher plane. Although this is just kind of speculation commentary from some scholars. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The Prophet ﷺ described to the best of his ability what that first method was like from his perspective. He said for him it's like the ringing of a bell. Aisha said what it was like from her perspective. She said that I have seen the Prophet ﷺ on a very cold day. He was receiving revelation and sweat, and his sweat was dripping from him, even though it was a very cold day. This description of the state that the Prophet ﷺ would go into, and it's been described by a number of the Sahaba. There's another hadith in Sahih Al-Bukhari and Muslim where there was a man named Ya'la ibn Umayyah. He was also a new Muslim. This was before the Battle of this was, I think, the Hudaybiyah. He came to Umar ibn Khattab and he said, "Can you show me? I want to see the Prophet ﷺ when he's receiving revelation." So Umar told him to wait. Later on, a man came to the Prophet ﷺ, and a Bedouin came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him some question about something he had done in Hajj. So revelation came to the Prophet ﷺ, and Umar went and called this man Ya'la and told him to come. And he had him look in the tent, and Ya'la described the Prophet ﷺ as he was red in the face, and I could hear him breathing heavily. And then when that was over, he asked, "Where's the man who asked me this question?" And he gave him the answer to the question. Also, Zayd ibn Thabit, once mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ received revelation. They were sitting together, and the Prophet's leg was on his leg. Zayd ibn Thabit said, when he received revelation, I felt like my leg was going to break because of the weight. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ was on a camel when Surah Al-Fath was revealed to him, and they said the camel kneeled down. Now, also there's another narration that Umar ibn Khattab said that when the Prophet ﷺ would receive revelation, we could hear a sound around his face like the buzzing of bees. Now, this is as far as the first way the Prophet ﷺ talked about. There are, some scholars have said that there are other ways, and if we look at this one, there are times when the Prophet ﷺ saw the angel in his true form, and they said that only happened twice. And scholars have mentioned some other ways, but the Prophet ﷺ apparently, in this hadith, he wanted to give a simple answer, so he mentioned the two most common or most frequent ways. Jazakumullah khair. We'll stop at this hadith because the next hadith is very long. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are there any questions?
Alhamdulillah.